Welcome to my revision of my textbook that I wrote to teach homeschoolers about world history called A Bible Believer Looks at World History, which I sell on Amazon and Lulu.com. And I'm picking up where I left off yesterday. And I was talking about Philo, a Jewish philosopher from Alexandria who was really important in mixing Greek philosophy with Jewish theology, Hebrew theology. Now, Edersheim, in his book, The Life and Times of Jesus the Messiah, that's Urban's Publishing, 1971, he says this about Philo, quote, everything became symbolical in his hands if it suited his purpose. Numbers in a very arbitrary manner, beasts, birds, fowls, creeping things, plants, stones, elements, substances, conditions, even sex. And so a term or expression might even have several and contradictory meanings from which the interpreter was at liberty to choose, unquote. Now, as a member of one of Alexandria's leading families, seeing that his brother was a political leader in the city, Philo's knowledge of Greek was so extensively better than his own native tongue of Hebrew that it was said of him, quote, Plato writes like Philo, Durant tells us. He was also the chief spokesman for the city's great synagogue, a building so huge that a system of relay signals had to be used to ensure a synchronized, responsive reading. It's not surprising that most of the scholars I've read agree that Egyptian manuscripts from Alexandria in particular are invariably the most corrupt, as evidenced by the fragments of papyri found. And this will play an important part later in how two strains of the Bible came down to us, one pure and one tainted by corruption from Egypt. Now, Bible typology, excuse me, backs up this negative view of Egypt. The book of Hebrews represents Egypt as the type of the world. Joseph's bones were not permitted to remain there. Exodus 13:19. God called both his nation, Exodus 15, and his son, Matthew 2:15, from there. And he would not even accept the horses that were brought from there, Deuteronomy 17:16. The book of Acts records no missionary activity to Egypt, which accounts for no original autographs coming from there. The Bible's first book ends with a coffin in Egypt. Egypt was a land obsessed with death. If you remember my earlier videos, a true land of coffins. Now, Alexandria was a magnificent city, there's no doubt. Durant says, I'm quoting him, of Egypt's 8,500,000 in population, its capital had now some 800,000, second only to Rome. In industry and commerce, it was first. Everyone in Alexandria is busy, says the letter, questionably Hadrian's. Everyone has a trade. Even the lame and the blind find work to do. Now, here among 1,000 other articles, glass, paper, and linen were produced on a large scale. Alexandria was the clothing and fashion center of the age, setting styles and making the goods. That's from Durant. Um, Now, the Emperor Hadrian settled the matter more clearly when he said, quote, money was the people's god. The city also had a library that was famous throughout history, containing over 700,000 papyrus rolls, which the Muslim invaders several centuries later used to heat the city's baths for several months when they burned them. Alexandria was also noteworthy in that Durant tells us that an ancient commentator referred to Alexandria as the house of Aphrodite, dedicated to the worship of the great goddess known as Venus, Diana, Ishtar, and other names which is so prevalent in history. The feminine side of Satan, the great deceiver, enemy of all that is good and holy. In the late 2nd century, a theological school is established at Alexandria that will be the source of a great deal of corruption of biblical manuscripts, but we'll discuss that later. By contrast, Antioch was where Christians were first called as such. And I'm going to have something to say about that next. So if you watch this, please click like and subscribe, and definitely feel free to make comments. If you disagree with something I've said, just provide your citations so I can learn from you. And I'm going to use this. I'm using this revision to help me figure out what I'm going to do differently, add to dig deeper, change, whatever. Thank you for watching.